Hello, my name's Bev and I'm the author of the book Please Eat, A Mother's Struggle to Free Her Teenage Son from Anorexia, which describes our family's battle with the deadly eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, which my teenage son Ben developed back in 2009 when he was just 15 years old. I wrote this blog post the same day as I wrote the last blog post, on the 12th of January 2011. The reason I did was that because the previous post talks about overcoming all the little challenges which helped Ben push forward and towards eventual recovery from his anorexia. And then later that day I wrote this blog post, which is all about anorexia bringing in reinforcements. As I said at the end of the last blog, it's almost like a game of whack-a-mole. Just when you think you're getting somewhere, whack, it goes down and another problem crops up. So this particular post from the 12th of January 2011 is called Anorexia Brings in Reinforcements. The analogy that anorexia is like a battle is a pretty obvious one to make. But as an enemy, anorexia is extremely cunning. It's as if the anorexia realises that it is losing on the main fronts, so it brings in reinforcements, a new anorexia battalion that we didn't know existed. You can almost see the anorexia jumping up and down with devilish glee if it were a person. In our case, the anorexia reinforcements arrived with a vengeance when Ben started back at school in September of last year, 2010, after having been away from school since March, except for his GCSE exams, which the school allowed him to sit in private. I was naturally worried about how the anorexia would affect the return to school. How would socialising go? Would the school phobia still be present? Would the distressing "I can't go on" anorexia-fueled texts start again? How would the anorexia affect school dinners? But what I hadn't planned for was the insomnia. At the heart of Ben's anorexia lies extreme anxiety, and within a couple of days of starting back at school, a two fingers up at the anorexia victory in itself, pow, the anorexia brought in reinforcements in the form of insomnia. Strangely, ever since then, it's really only been the lack of sleep and the school dinners issue that have affected school. After an initial rocky start on the social front, the other issues have been mainly resolved. Thanks to the anorexia reinforcements, Ben finds it impossible to sleep. Occasionally he will sleep for 5 hours, but it's very rare and never more than that. Usually the anorexia demon, as we refer to it, wakes him up at 1 or 2 a.m. and keeps him awake. Often it sends his thoughts racing, worrying about what he's going to eat for breakfast and throughout the day, and a host of other things. Because of this, Ben is off school far more often than he should be at this stage in the anorexia recovery. Thankfully, the school is sympathetic and emails work home and gets other pupils to pass on notes from missed lessons. But today, Ben is sitting 2 AS exams, and this morning, thanks to the demon keeping him awake all night, he was like the walking dead. No doubt the demon is thrilled at this victory, jeopardising his chances in the exams when he would otherwise have done very well. And the exam boards just don't understand. They really don't make allowances these days, and like many people, they simply don't understand anorexia and other eating disorders. I think with the GCSE exams, a few % extra could be awarded as a special case, thanks to a letter from our psychiatrist, but that was all. Thankfully, back in June, when Ben sat the GCSEs, he was sleeping. Now the anorexia could seriously undermine his chances of getting AS and A-level qualifications. But, as I always tell him, exams can be resat. It's just so frustrating that, just when you seem to be making headway, the anorexia brings in a new battalion that's been hiding round the corner, taking you completely by surprise. And so far, no one seems to be able to do anything about the insomnia. Not the GP, CAMS, nor anyone. That's the end of that particular blog post. It may sound like we were trying to push Ben to sit his GCSEs, his AS levels and A levels to get his qualifications, but we weren't. Ben was very keen to do well academically himself. It was one of the motivators, and it helped take his mind off the eating disorder. Studying at home instead of school had been very productive, and the school had been amazingly supportive, and I'll probably talk about more of that later in another blog. But another thing I want to say is that we refer to the anorexia as an anorexia demon. This doesn't mean to say that we're looking at this like something from The Exorcist or religious in any way. It was just that it is like a separate entity that changes your child's being, really. It not only changes their appearance, but it changes their mind too, and it seems to want to get an iron grip of them and drag them down and do everything it can to try and push them towards destruction. It is, I mean, to say it's like an inner critic on steroids is probably underestimating it. It's far, far stronger than that. They always say you should try and separate your child from the eating disorder. Your child is not the eating disorder. Your child is the young person that you've loved and nurtured from birth, and the eating disorder is like a separate entity. And if you've been through this, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, you'll probably think it's a bit weird and a bit extreme describing it like this, but that's the way it is. Anyway, thank you for listening. The next post includes more comparisons with 2010, which was a year before I wrote this blog, and it just outlines more very, very slightly positive moves, like a tiny ripple in a big ocean, which was very, very slow, very, very small, but all in, when you add them all up, they all added up to big victories. Thank you for listening. You'll find a link below to my blog, and you'll also find a link to my website where you can download free PDFs of my blog, and also a link to Amazon where you can buy a copy of my book.